also ask that the document that the witness brought with him be marked.
There's no basis to have the document the witness brought with him marked, Judge. I object to it being made part of the record, and you can't be intimidating this man on the witness stand like this.
Sir, may I see the document that you brought with you, of course, that came from Roger Lee?
Your Honor, I believe he's either entitled to his own counsel or the court needs to tell him it's his choice.
Or the man brought a piece of evidence with him that came from the defendant, brought it with him on the stand. The man has a piece of paper. The court made observations. We don't know what's in that record, in that document, compared to the man's testimony. It is.
That is a matter of law enforcement, not a matter of this court. And Mr. Stege, with all due respect, is not law enforcement. He needs an officer to do that. He needs somebody to do that. He wants to have this man interviewed. We're not conducting discovery or police interrogation or a police interview in this courtroom today. Where I don't see any legal basis for this man to have to hand over these documents to Mr. Stege. Judge, the only question before this court right now, if I may, is whether or not this man needs to be advised that he does not need to hand over those documents to Mr. Stege just because he asked for it. And Mr. Stege is asking him, as an officer of the state, with multiple law enforcement agents in the courtroom, whether or not he wants to give that to him. Well, he doesn't have to.
Man brings it up, describes having gotten it from the defendant, a thing that is harmful to Mr. Evenson's argument.
I'm saying that this man, as a witness, as a person in the United States of America, has a right to know that he does not need to cooperate with Mr. Stege. That's fact. That's the law, and Mr. Stege cannot contest that.
Mr. Evans and Mr. Pitaro would like to proceed first.
Thank you, Your Honor. It's Evenson.
I'm sorry, Mr.
It's okay.
I apologize.
No, it's unbelievably calm. Ma'am, obviously you and I have had some dealings on the civil side of this case as well that went on for several years. Is that correct?
Several years?
Not our dealings, but the civil case went on for several years. I came in at the end. Is that right?
Since my mom passed. I don't know, it's been several years, maybe a year.
Okay, right. Needless to say, the relationship between you and your brother is at best strained and at worst hateful.
I would say strained.
Okay. Do you talk to him?
I do not.
When was the last time you spoke to him about something other than your mother or the guardianship?
Probably 6 or 7 years.
Okay. And have you sent each other Christmas cards or gifts or been over to any houses or spent any holidays together?
No.
Okay. Did you do any of that stuff before 2013?
Yes.
Okay. So obviously what went on in your family caused a tremendous amount of stress and heartache for everybody. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. With regards to what took place with the sale of the house was sold, right?
Yes.
And it was approved to be sold the next day, as you testified to?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have any evidence that would suggest that the event of August 9th was involved in any way with the sale of the house?
The timing.
Other than the timing. I mean, I'm not saying, that's not a factor, but other than the timing, do you have any evidence from any source in any way, shape, or form that would indicate that this had anything to do with the house?
The information about the brokerage that he went to my brokerage to keep the house from being sold.
But that had been going on for months, right? In fact, your testimony is that had been going on for years that he'd been trying to keep the house from being sold, right?
Yeah, but he went to the brokerage in July.
Well, okay, but this is August 9th, right?
Correct.
Okay, and he allegedly went to the brokerage in July. Because you weren't there when he went there, were you?
I was not.
Okay, so you only have that on information that other people purportedly provided to you, right?
Correct.
Okay, so relative to him wanting to have, him not wanting the house sold, that had been going on for several years. That was not new.
Correct.
Okay, so other than the timing that the hearing was the next day, is there any evidence from any source to indicate that the two were tied together?
I object because she said it was
things other than the timing. And it's sort of an argumentative question.
I'm looking for I agreed with her that the timing is a factor. I'm looking if there's any other factors. How is that argumentative?
I don't think the question's argumentative. I'll allow it.
Well, the fact that he went to the PERS, my mom's PERS, and tried to have that,
Well, let's talk about that before you give an answer. I can object that that's non-responsive, and you're saying you went to PERS. Were you at PERS when you went to PERS?
no,
Do you know that he was physically in the PERS building?
I've been told.
You've been told, right, which is hearsay, which I now have to ask that the court strike that answer as being hearsay.
I think the court has adopted a pretty reasonable approach to dealing with matters of this nature, and so I asked the court to apply that.
Well, that would be,
I think in this
Well,
case,
especially if you open the door to it, right, then it,
I would caution you, Mr. Evenson, you are asking some pretty open-ended questions. You may be opening the door to some of these things, but her directly testifying to what she was told, I think that at this point is hearsay.
thank you. So Ms. Renwick, you now want to use something that can't come in as evidence to support the answer to my question. And so you're saying, well, he went to PERS, but you don't know that he went to PERS, you only heard he went to PERS.
I saw an email from PERS.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Go ahead, I'll withdraw the question. I'll withdraw it, that's fine. He objected, her answer doesn't count. I'll move on. So, relative to, you indicated that in 2016, when your mom went in, she was incapacitated. She was unable to walk, she was unable to feed herself, she was unable to bathe herself, she was unable to do anything in 2016.
Oh, so maybe I should have used the term, not competent to take care of herself?
Okay, but those go ahead, I'm sorry.
She couldn't take care of herself, she couldn't live alone.
Okay, but you would use the term incapacitated. And you had said that there was a slow decline with her Alzheimer's, and at some point you indicated she became nonverbal.
Even in 2016, when she was placed at Stone Valley,
Right,
she could speak words. She frequently could not answer questions or ask questions.
I understand that, but you still said that you could tell things that she wanted or didn't want, and she still had emotional responses to some things.
She had emotional responses.
And that was even up until August 9th, the last day you saw her before this alleged crime took place?
Yes.
Okay. And so, relative to her ability to say what she wanted or didn't want, she could do that, couldn't she?
She could not say what she wanted.
I say was a wrong term, express.
Okay,
She could express what she wanted or didn't.
non-verbally.
Correct. Is that right? You're nodding your head up and down as if
Yes,
to say
yes.
yes. Okay. So, let me ask you this question. When you talked to law enforcement, it's in the police reports, you indicated that your brother was mentally ill. Is that correct?
I don't remember that, but
Has mental health issues, some wording to that effect. Does that sound accurate?
yeah,
Okay. And you indicated that he had changed over time, or that things had happened and he had an injury of some sort. Is that right?
yes.
What was the nature of that injury?
He was injured on the job. He was hit in the head with a hood of a vehicle.
Okay. And after that, it changed him. That incident changed him.
Possibly, yes.
Okay. And you indicated one other thing, that the idea of, you came in and Roger and another person was discussing her getting out of the facility. This was sometime in July of 2018, I think you said the last time you saw him there.
Yes.
You said that there was a court order prohibiting that?
That the judge has asked that we do not discuss any conflicting situations with my mom directly.
Okay, so do you know whether or not, in light of the fact your testimony is that your mother was nonverbal at this time, you're saying that Roger was saying, we're gonna get you out here, we're gonna get you home, right?
Yes,
Wouldn't it make sense then that the reason why Roger wanted to keep the house was for her and not for him?
he wanted to keep it for both of them.
Okay, but it's very clear that he wanted to bring her home, and that home was where he was living, right?
Yes.
Okay. I have nothing for you, thank you.
Mr. Pitaro,
No, Your Honor, no questions, thank you.
Mr. Stege, may you redirect?
Yes, have you ever seen any proof of a head injury from your brother or something else?
I've never seen any proof.
Is this something he has talked about? Or statements he has made about his,
Yeah.
what happened to him?
He was, yeah.
In relation to the hearing the next day to sell the house, did your brother appear at that hearing?
He did not.
No further questions.
If I may follow up, Your Honor.
You may.
Are you indicating under oath today that you believe that Roger was not injured at work and had nothing, and had nothing happen to him? Is that where the question from Mr. Stege is taking?
No,
Objection, that's
I just don't have proof. I never saw anything.
Okay, so, but the injury was well known within the family, something occurred, he was hospitalized, those kind of things all took place, right?
Yes,
And that was well known to you, right?
yes,
You visited him in the hospital after he was injured, right?
no,
But you didn't visit him, but you knew he'd been hurt.
yes,
Okay, so you're not saying in any way, shape, or form that injury and those things didn't take place, you're just saying you haven't seen proof of it, right?
correct.
Objection, because it
I
calls
have-
for, I'm distracted, because it calls for a credibility. He's basically saying, you're not saying he's a liar, are you? Right, that's an improper question, because it asks one witness to weigh on the credibility of another.
That was not the point in asking the question, it was a response to Mr. Staky's question on it, I think it stands on its own merits.
And I think the way the question was worded, it was appropriate, so I will allow the question and the answer to stand.
Thank you, Your Honor. Nothing further.
Any redirect based on that, Mr. Stege?
No, thank you.
All right. Counsel, may this witness be excused?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, Your Honor.
Sure.
All right, so this witness shall be excused. Thank you. Counsel, it is now approximately noon. I think this is a good time to take a break for lunch. Let me inquire on all three counsel, when would you like to resume? Would you like to resume 1 o'clock, 1:30?
1 o'clock, Judge, so we can get as much in as we can today to accommodate Mr. Pitaro.
Any objection, Mr. Stege or Mr. Pitaro, 1 o'clock?
No, no objection.
All right, we will resume then at 1 o'clock. We'll be in recess.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All rise.
Hello, counsel. We are back on the record in this case, and where we had left off, Mr. Stege, I believe you are going to call your next witness.
Yes, Ms. Olivieri, please. Did you catch that, Your Honor?
Not quite.
I'm being told it'll be just a second from my staff.
All right, no problem.
I'll call someone else. Let's call Ms. Campbell, please.
All right. Good afternoon, ma'am. If you could please raise your right hand once you're in the witness stand. Do you promise the testimony you're about to provide you only the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under penalty of perjury?
Yes.
Thank you. Please be seated.
Thank you, ma'am. Please state and spell your name.
Lisa Campbell, Lisa, Mariecampbell.
How long have you lived in the Washoe County area?
Oh, 21 years approximately.
Okay. Do you know a person by the name of Robin Renwick?
Yes, I do.
And how do you know her?
I know Robin because I met her. Her mother lived at Stone Valley when I was the administrator there years ago.
And did you also know Roger Hillygus in the same capacity?
I did, not well, but yes, I did. I knew who he was.
Okay, in your capacity there as the former administrator, tell us about any contact you had had with Roger.
Contact with Roger was very minimal. I talked to him on the phone a couple times when he called to check in about his mother. I couldn't tell you exactly how many times. He came to visit his mother a couple of times, but it was very minimal.
And when was it that you ceased being the administrator at Stone Valley?
Oh boy, I wasn't prepared for that one. I would say it was probably February of 2006. 2016.
Okay, and so what you just described as your contact with Roger and Robin comes from that time period.
Absolutely.
Subsequent to that, did you have a job that brought you in contact with Stone Valley?
Before I was the administrator?
No, afterwards. After
Yes,
you're
I
the
did.
administrator, you were engaged in a line of work where you
Yes.
could still go to Stone Valley.
Not on a regular basis. I actually went to work in the food service industry and I was trying to solicit them as a customer.
Okay, and in that process, you found yourself at Stone Valley on August 8th, 2019.
Absolutely.
And tell us about what you observed and what happened on that date.
I was there on business. I was there trying to solicit their account for the company I was working for. I had walked in the front entrance and had asked to talk to the chef, and the community relations director greeted me, Tom, and we were having a conversation about where I worked and why I was there, and I was at the front door. Sorry, my mask is slipping. I was at the front door talking to the community relations director, and I was standing like almost blocking a little tiny bit of the entrance because I think there was a chair there or something I was standing in front of. We were having a conversation. I noticed people coming and going, probably because that's what I did there just, in the past.
Okay.
I noticed two gentlemen walk in. We continued our brief conversation, and I happened to look up because I saw the door open again, the door that went into the community. And Sue Hillygus was walking out with two gentlemen, and I was just really surprised to see Sue leaving the facility. As she walked by me, I think I might have even reached up and touched her shoulder, and I know I addressed her.
Okay,
And I said, hi Sue, where are you going? And of course, she didn't respond to me. She wouldn't always respond. But she did smile, and they continued out the front door. At that time, I immediately looked at Tom and said, where's Sue going? And he said, she's probably going to lunch with her family. And I said, I don't think so. I don't. And he goes, yeah, that's her son, and he's taking her to lunch. And I said, I don't think that he's supposed to be taking her to lunch, or I think I said, I don't know if that family member, I don't know my exact words at the time, but I told him I didn't think she should be leaving the building. And I did tell him that I understood with HIPAA, he couldn't tell me any changes of what's happened within the facility, but I told Tom, I said, with HIPAA, I understand things could have changed since I've been here. I haven't been here in a few years, but I don't think that family member is supposed to be leaving the building, and I suggest you call his daughter or her daughter immediately. And Tom replied that he knows Robin very well, and I
Objection,
said,
Your Honor, hearsay.
well, perhaps I'll ask a new question given the narrative.
And since there was no objection raised previously, I let the narrative continue, but at this point, there needs to be questions asked and answered, so that if there are objections raised, we know exactly what they're referring to.
Okay, now you had known Susan Hillygus in your time working at the facility, correct?
correct.
And so that's sort of how you recognized her, because you were familiar with her. And were you also familiar in a general sense of her, like her state, right, her capacity? And so that's sort of what drew your attention as she walked by you.
Correct.
And did you recognize either of the people that she was with?
It was very brief. My eyesight was on Susan.
Okay,
I thought it could be Roger but he looked very different than the Roger that I had met in the past, who was very buttoned up. He just looked he looked like it could be Roger, but he didn't look like Roger as I had seen him.
okay,
My attention was on Sue and while she was leaving the building.
okay. And did you have concerns, you had concerns based on what you knew, having worked there, about the status of Susan being there, like sort of legal issues?
Correct. That's absolutely correct.
And that's why you brought that to the attention of Tom.
Absolutely.
And you said in your testimony that of course she didn't answer, or of course she didn't answer. Why did you use that term, ascribe that to of course?
Because the Susan that I had been familiar with at the building at the time I was there had memory issues, was diagnosed with memory issues, that's why she lived there. And she didn't always respond with verbiage. Sometimes she did, but not always. She would always smile, but she wouldn't always respond with verbiage.
Okay, and always smile, like regardless of what the sort of interaction is?
Correct, she had a
Okay.
very pleasant sense.
Okay. And so not necessarily smiling as sort of a communication, but just as.
Your Honor, objection, leading question.
Can you rephrase that, Mr. Stege?
In what, as you, based on your experience, did her smile have anything to do with communication?
No. But if she was, you could usually read her face, the Susan I knew, but she smiled more often than not.
Okay. Had you seen these two men, had you seen them come in? While you're there speaking, had you seen that they had come in?
Yes, I just saw the backs of them as they walked in.
Okay, and how much time between you seeing them walk by you and then you see them coming out with Susan?
It would be a guess. I wasn't there very long.
Okay, and are you certain it was the same two men?
Oh, that I'm certain of.
So you had said you're having this conversation with Tom. What's the next thing that happens? Like, are you able to turn around and see where the men went?
Yes, absolutely. They walked right by me. I was concerned why Susan was leaving. So I absolutely watched them walk out the front door with her.
Okay, and where did they go?
They walked across the parking lot to the shopping center or mall across the street.
Now, within Stone Valley, is there parking in front of the facility near the door you've been describing?
Yes,
Is there a parking lot?
yes.
And you described that they crossed the street with
Yes.
Susan. What, were you able to see what happened once they got across the street?
No, I was worried about Susan's safety and I was talking to Tom about getting Robin on the phone. So I had walked out the building, which is why I saw them. And I was trying to get Robin on the phone.
Were you able to do that?
I was.
Okay. In terms of, what's the next thing you're able to see in terms of where the men went with Susan?
I got in my car and I saw a vehicle leaving that area. I don't know if the men themselves were in the vehicle. I don't know that for a fact.
Okay. Did you follow that vehicle or what did you do?
I saw
From
that
your view.
vehicle leave out that parking lot and turn left towards Rock Drive.
Do you recall what kind of vehicle it was?
Oh, I'm so bad with cars. It was a dark colored vehicle, maybe like a really dark navy. It was either a truck with a cab on it or like an SUV vehicle.
Can you describe in any more detail how it was that the men were with her? Like, were they touching her? Were they, what speed were they going at? What speed was she going at? Anything like
They were
that?
Your Honor, I'm
walking
going
around.
to object, unless, I may have missed it, but didn't she say that she didn't know that these guys were, that who was in the vehicle? Isn't this speculation at this point?
Mrs. Stege?
The question does not relate to the vehicle. It relates to how the men were walking with
Oh, we're
Susan.
walking. I'm sorry, I apologize.
They
Withdraw the
left,
objection.
they left the parking lot walking rapidly.
And what about in relation to when they were inside the facility?
I didn't see them inside, I didn't see them on the other side of the door.
Okay. And the distance between, like, do you see them come out of the door to the residence portion? Do you see them come out of that door?
I saw them come out the residence door to the front door.
Okay. And what's that sort of the distance from that residence door to where you're standing?
Oh, that is such,
Or,
I'm so bad at
okay,
I'd say, I don't know, maybe 12 feet?
and how about in terms of like steps? How many steps would it take you to walk that, do you think?
Me?
Yeah,
I would guess it would take me about 10 steps.
okay. And so that's when you see the, Susan come with them. Is the pace, from the residence door to where you are, how does that relate to the pace, the sort of the hurried pace you saw outside?
I couldn't tell you anything about the pace in the building.
Okay.
I was just watching Susan, that's what I paid attention to.
Okay, and what about once they're outside, was either Susan holding on to one of the men or the men holding on to one of them?
Your Honor, I'm going to object to the leading question.
If it suggested the answer, we would know, it'd be apparent from the question. That is a definition of a leading question. These sort of the options, as the court has noted, are open-ended, and it is an open-ended question.
I'll allow it.
Your Honor, may I respond for the purposes of the record?
Go ahead.
We're talking about an incident that happened 2 years ago, and we're talking about whether or not there is some allegation of force being used or anything like that, excuse me. And I think it is inappropriate for the district attorney to suggest options under that circumstances. In what position was the alleged victim and the men in? Were they touching her, which has already been asked and answered. For him to suggest any alternatives for her to choose from is inappropriate and leading, in my opinion. Thank you.
Well, you can answer the question. I've already made my relay, Mr. Evenson was making this request.
Can you ask the question again?
Right, and I'll make it even more open-ended. Were the men either like holding on to her, or was she holding on to them at all during from the door to outside until we last saw it?
I know that when they were leaving, they were holding her, either her arm or her hand, when they were leaving. I didn't pay that much attention once they were outside the door, other than watching them cross the street because I was worried about where Susan was going. So I couldn't tell you what, I didn't pay attention to that.
Were you able to previously describe what the second man looked like to officers?
I can't recall.
As you sit here today, are you able to describe what the second man, let's call him, looked like, or what he was wearing?
I believe they were both wearing shorts. One had a Hawaiian shirt kind of style on. or some kind of print on the back of a t-shirt. And the second gentleman was heavier set, much heavier set.
And
That's
anything,
about all I could describe.
okay, anything stand out in terms of height, like were abnormally tall or short or anything?
No, I wasn't paying that much attention to that.
And so, do you believe that the person you saw was Roger Hillygus walking out?
Your Honor, that has been asked and answered. She said she was uncertain. She said that it appeared maybe it could have been him, but he wasn't dressed like he normally was. He appeared to be much more rough. It didn't look like him. I was not focused on them. I was focused on Sue, was exactly what she asked and answered to this question already.
And to clarify, this direct question was not asked of the witness. The questioning revolved around, does she know Roger, and sort of describing what happened. As to the direct question of her belief as to whether it was Roger on the date in question has not been put to the witness.
We have had some testimony, I think, about this issue previously, but I'll allow the question.
Can you say the question one more time?
Yeah, do you believe the person that was you saw walking out with Susan was Roger Hillygus?
It wasn't, I would say that I was told it was Roger,
Okay.
and I would say it could have been Roger, but I would say it isn't the Roger that I had seen. I mean, he obviously resembled Roger, but he wasn't dressed to the nines and the Roger that I had had contact with. I was paying all my attention to Susan.
Did you, I'll ask you about, as this group walked past you, did you exclaim anything about who the person was to Tom? Does that make sense?
Yes,
Did you say, Tom, hey, isn't that, did you make a statement to that effect?
yes.
What was the statement that you made?
I said, Tom said he was going out to, Susan was going out to lunch with her son. And I said to Tom, if that's Roger, that family member can't take Susan to lunch. I don't believe unless something's been changed.
And Your Honor, I would object. This has already been asked and answered as well. We're repeating testimony.
So, Mr. Stege, we have covered some of these issues before. If there's a new angle that we're going for, then obviously continue, but we have covered some of this already.
I'm gonna ask you about a previous statement that you made to a police detective, specifically Detective Barnes. Do you admit or deny previously stating that as the group walked by, you thought to yourself, hey, isn't that Roger Hillygus?
Your Honor, I'm going to object because that's facts not in evidence until that witness testifies. That's my objection.
My response is it is proper impeachment to, of course, introduce a prior consistent or inconsistent statement. The witness must be afforded the opportunity to admit or deny the statement. That is what I've just done, is asking her to admit or deny having previously made that statement. Then we would move to the next step.
If he's
As
admitting he's
suggested by
impeaching his
Evenson.
own witness at this point, I'll withdraw my objection.
There's no need to admit anything. There's a proper evidentiary rule and course.
So I will allow the question.
I would say that was absolutely my thought process, but I could not, I had been gone, so I couldn't admit or deny in my own, I couldn't say, that's Roger, but that absolutely was my thought process, yes.
Very good. I'll pass the witness. Thank you.
No questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Pitaro, any questions?
And I said, you know, Grandma, I'm going to be a legal secretary just like you. And she looked at me straight in the eye and said, no, you're going to be a lawyer.
One of the issues that the court system has is
Those who are present and have stated appearance.
The defendants will be enjoined from using them any further.
All right, counsel, where are we at on this matter?
There was not a lot of detail about the attempted service.
If you go off on a rant again, I will act accordingly.
So this is a status check on discovery scheduling.
Yeah, but give me a moment.
Of course.
Ms. Campbell, you were asked a direct examination concerning what you observed on August 8th. And you were asked, did you give a statement to the police? You remember that? In fact, you gave a recorded statement, didn't you?
I gave a statement, I can't recall what kind of a statement.
Do you remember Detective Barnes coming and talking to you
Yes.
and going through that?
Yes,
And then him telling you to write out a statement also? And so you spoke to him, and then you did a handwritten statement, correct?
that is correct.
Okay. Now, there's been some confusion, at least as to what wasn't said back then a few years ago. So I'm going to ask you directly, isn't it true that you described the two individuals you saw walking out of the rest facility?
At that time,
Yes. To the police officer.
yes, I probably did.
One of those you described as Roger, or you said you was Roger. Is that correct?
Or who I thought was Roger, correct.
Well, isn't it true you said it was Roger?
Sir, I can't recall, if you want me to
Okay,
be
well,
honest.
then I have to ask him this way then. Isn't it true that you told Detective Barnes that, on August 14th, that you saw two people walking out? One person you described as an individual with a baseball cap on. Do you remember that?
I do,
And the other person did not have a baseball cap on,
correct.
right? And for our purposes here, the purpose that had the baseball cap on, you did not know who that individual was.
I can't recall.
Isn't it true you told Detective Barnes that you did not know who that person was?
Probably, because I was thinking, but I could not mandate or state for fact. That's true.
And the reason I'm
But it
asking
was
that,
my thought
Okay,
process.
I understand.
It wasn't a fact, it was a thought.
I understand, it's just, sometimes we have to ask questions a certain way.
Sure.
So that's really what I'm doing here. And what you said was, when you were asked in direct examination by the prosecutor, were they holding her hand? Meaning Mrs. Hillygus, correct? Isn't it true that you told Detective Barnes in your statement to him that Roger was holding her hand, not the person with the baseball cap?
I cannot recall
calls.
Now, also, you were asked concerning the statements that you had with, the conversation you had with Mr. Tom Taylor, correct? And you relayed that. But you were asked questions concerning, by Detective Barnes, what did Mrs. Hillygus look like when you observed her? Do you remember that?
Correct.
And remember telling Detective Barnes when he asked you, okay, by Detective Barnes, who had Susan's hand? Did they both have Sue's hands? And isn't it true your answer was the other guy? Your answer was no, Roger had Sue's hand. Remember give that answer, Detective Barnes?
I do not.
Okay. Now, in addition, you were asked what Mrs. Hillygus looked like to you, what you were observing about her. And isn't it true you told Detective Barnes in response to the question, they were going pretty quick and she was trying to, okay, Mrs. Detective asked you, did she appear happy, scared, indifferent? And isn't it true your answer was, when I mentioned her name and looked at her, she smiled, but that's her personality right now. She's just a happy person until she starts to get agitated or she gets anxious. She didn't appear facially in any grief.
That's true.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And as you're testifying today, you remember she didn't appear to be facially in any grief.
That's correct.
All right. And when you were asked how fast they were walking, you said, in response to the detective, okay, just kind of indifferent, going for a ride type of thing. And your answer to the detective was, she was definitely walking lots faster than she probably should have been, but she's very agile.
Objection, I invoke 50.135, sub 1, which requires that upon request, the statement shall be shown or disclosed to opposing counsel prior to being confronted with the statement. 50.135, sub 1.
With all due respect, they're the ones that gave me the tape.
Okay, I wish to be shown it. He's certainly not reading from a tape.
No, I had to transcribe it.
Right, and so.
Do you want me to play it? If we may, I'll play the interview, Your Honor.
I don't think that's what's being asked. Mr. Stege, are you asking to just be shown the transcript?
To be shown the transcript, I also asked.
There you go. Don't pay this stress, it sounds like privilege. All right, next page, please. Next page.
Okay,
All right,
thank you.
yeah, no problem. I thought your objection was that you didn't know there was this statement, was my mistake. When you were asked that kind of indifferent, going for a ride type thing, as the detective asked you, you said that she was definitely walking like fast, and she probably should have been, but she's very agile. And then you said, but no, she didn't appear distressed. Remember telling the detective that?
Correct.
Was that a yes? I'm sorry.
That was correct.
Thank you. And you then said that when you then, I guess, left or left the area and you lost sight of the individuals. All right,
I was
And-
getting in my car, correct,
and what was your car parked?
in the parking lot,
Okay,
facing the shopping center.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
My
hear
car
you.
was in the parking lot facing the shopping center.
So what you're saying is the automobile you saw him walk into was not in the parking lot, it was in, across the street?
Correct.
Okay. Now, when you were at Stone Valley, you said, were you the manager?
I was the administrator of the building.
And what was that? I mean, what does that title mean?
I had the responsibility of the building,
Of what?
of the building. I was.
Maintenance, that sort of thing, or the whole facility?
I was ultimately responsible for the building under corporate guidance.
Okay. And then you left then, and then this incident that happened about, you said 2.5 years after you left?
Mm-hmm, correct,
All right, and that is the reason you gave for your hesitancy as to
correct.
identifications. Okay, we understand that. And the thing is that when you saw, you testified you saw an automobile, but you said you weren't sure if that was or wasn't an automobile relative to this matter.
Correct.
Was that correct?
That was,
You just saw an automobile and you mentioned that it was there, but you were not able to say one way or the other if it was the automobile that you believe Mrs.
Actually, no.
Hillygus was in.
I believe is different, but factually, no.
Okay. All right, and you say you didn't see them in the facility?
Not behind the locked door, no.
Okay, and you said they're locked doors, how do they get unlocked?
It opens upon, it's a memory care facility, so it's a secured environment. Once you come into the building, which is not secured, then there's a door that is a secured environment. And how you get past that secured door is by someone who attends at the door, or one of the employees lets you in or out, or perhaps you have a code to get in or out.
Okay, so generally the opening and the closing of the locked doors, if you will, are done generally by an employee of the facility.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Generally, yes.
And that was the procedure when you were there?
Yes.
When you were there, was there a procedure to check identification when people came in?
When I was there, you had to sign in at the sign-in desk. And we got to know people that were there on a regular basis. We did not check identification.
If you knew the person? What if you didn't know the person?
Usually if they signed in, we didn't check an ID, if that's what you're asking.
Well, let me ask you, how did you know that they had any sort of right to meet with anyone in this locked facility if you didn't know who they were?
And I object to, given the time frame, I object to the relevance of the prior procedure versus anything else.
Mr. Pitaro, the relevance of the.
Well, I think it's relevant because I think the testimony is going to show you, Ron, as we go through this, that the facility isn't exactly the same mechanical doors, that sort of thing, and these are the same procedures.
That is not the same procedures. I
They
don't
are.
hear you.
Are,
They are.
my New England are.
All right, so, given that, I will allow, but I do agree with Mr. Stege, let's be mindful of we're talking about something a long time.
Okay. And with that, then you said, you made the comments to Mr. Taylor, and then you ultimately left. So what you're telling us today is you were the one who alerted Mr. Taylor to what you thought was a situation, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and he responded to your thing is that she goes out to lunch with her son,
That
correct?
was his response.
Yes. And so he didn't seem concerned that this individual, these two individuals were taking Mrs. Hillygus out, did he?
That would be an assumption on my part, but if you were asking me my opinion, then I would say he didn't
Objection
seem-
to,
The what?
objection.
No, wait for her answer before you let her answer, then you can object. I can't get both.
Well, I think he heard part of her answer and that raised the objection. Go ahead,
Right.
Mr. Stege.
To opinion, right? Opinion, we have rules about opinion evidence.
Well, let me ask you this, then, let me change a little. Mr. Taylor told you that he thought it was, given the nature of the sentences that you just told us about, that it was appropriate that Mrs. Hillygus was going out with her son, correct?
Correct.
Okay. It was, he wasn't telling you that he thought there was a situation, you were telling him.
Correct.
And you knew him to be a employee of Stone Valley?
Correct.
And what was his title, if you know?
I know his title was the Community Relations Director.
Okay. So he had a position of responsibility, at least there.
Correct.
I have nothing further, thank you.
All right, Mr. Stege, any redirect based upon that?
No, thank you.
All right, Councilman, please be excused.
Yes, Your Honor. Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell, you may be excused. Mr. Stege, your next witness.
It's Ms. Olivieri, please.
Good afternoon, ma'am. If you could please approach the witness stand this direction.
Yes.
And once you get in the witness stand, I'll ask you to raise your right hand, please, and face me. Do you promise the testimony you're about to provide to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under penalty of perjury?
I do.
Thank you. Please be seated. Go ahead, Mr. Stege.
Thank you. Ma'am, please state your name, spelling your last name aloud.
Stephanie Elizabeth Olivieri, Olivieri.
Did you know Susan Hillygus?
Yes.
And how did you know her?
She and her husband boarded horses for me and also taught me to ride English.
And did you know her children, both Robin Renwick and Roger Hillygus?
Yes.
I want to ask you specifically about August 8th of 2019. Did you see Roger Hillygus that day?
Yes.
Tell us how that happened.
I was at my store working and Roger came to the store with Sue and brought her in.
And where is your store?
Truckee, California,
And what's the name of the store?
Cabonas.
And tell us what happened once he came in, Roger with Sue.
He was helping Sue. She seemed somewhat disoriented, so we helped her in and said that he had just picked her up from the memory care unit where she was staying and that he needed help. He needed to email something to the center he needed it faxed, excuse me, not emailed. He wanted me to have him fax something back to the center.
Okay, and so do you have a fax machine at your business?
We do.
Did you allow, or what was your response to the request?
I said, certainly, we could take care of that, and I had one of my staff members help with that.
And what was the size of the paperwork?
I believe it was 1 or 2 pages.
Were you able to see that Roger in fact had paperwork?
Yes.
Okay. And did you or someone else supervise him sending the fax?
Yes, my staff member.
Do you know, or did Roger say where the fax was being sent? Or anything about why he needed the fax?
He said that the court or the judge had awarded him custody of Sue. He had just picked her up and he needed to send the paperwork back to the home or the center where she was staying for them.
And while Roger is sending the fax, what are you doing?
Sue was standing with me and I was talking with Sue.
Okay. And was she able to engage in conversation with you?
Not really.
Did you notice anything else about her physical appearance?
She seemed nervous and disoriented. She didn't know who I was, I'm sure, and she just seemed uncomfortable.
Did you know the state of her pants?
Yeah, I thought her pants were wet, appeared to be wet,
Wet in what manner?
as if she had urinated in her pants.
What happens once, or what happens next?
I think I mentioned it to Roger, and I asked him if she might need to go to the bathroom, and he said he had, I believe he said that he had some things in the car.
Okay. Then what happened?
Let's see. I think they left right after that.
Okay. And did you see how they'd gotten to your store, or by what means they left?
No, they just walked in.
And you didn't see what car or anything else as to how they left?
No. Roger asked me if he could use my, if he could use our computers to email something. And I told him we couldn't do that, and I sent him to the Truckee Library.
Okay. Was that sort of the end of this interaction you described?
Yes, it was.
Thank you, ma'am. I'll pass the witness.
Nothing for me, Your Honor.
Mr. Pitaro?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
All right. Ma'am, thank you. You may be excused. Mr. Stewart, your next witness?
Ms. Harris, please.
Mr. Stewart?
Yes. I'm sorry. Delay that. Mr. Griffith, please.
All right. Good afternoon, sir. If you could face me and raise your right hand, please. Do you promise the testimony you're about to provide today with the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I don't promise you for truth.
Thank you.
Thank you. Please be seated. Mr. Stege?
Thank you. Sir, please state and spell your name.
Tracy Griffith, Tracy Griffith.
And how long have you lived in the Washoe County area?
Since I was born.
And as you sit here today, how old are you?
35.
You know a person by the name of Roger Hillygus?
I do.
How did you first meet Roger?
I do believe it was a Golden Valley garage sale day.
Okay.
Many years ago, I couldn't tell you how many.
Okay.
A long time ago.
And from there, you became friends?
Mhm.
And if you'll please answer either yes or no.
Yes.
Okay. I want to ask you about leading up to August 8th of 2019. Did Roger talk about the situation with his mother being in the memory care facility?
We did?
And had Roger ever talked to you about his opinion about her being there?
He did?
Would Roger talk about the case he was involved in with his sister?
I'm not particularly sure what you mean, which case you mean.
What I mean by that is, would Roger tell you details about the ongoing litigation surrounding the guardianship and trustee issue?
Yeah, he mentioned things in the past.
Did you, your residence, was that near the residence where Roger was staying?
I'm sorry, Could you be a little bit more clear? I don't quite understand. At the time, August 8th, or?
No, before the incident that we're here to talk about, had you ever been to Roger's house?
Yes, yes, I have.
Had you been to Roger's house when he was caring for his mother, Susan?
Yes, sir.
And was your house in that same part of town? Is that sort of how you came to know each other?
Well, this is my father's house, but yeah,
Okay.
we lived in Golden Valley.
Okay, and the house that Roger was staying at, caring for his mother, where was that?
In Golden Valley.
Okay, both in Golden Valley.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. In your conversations with Roger about the guardianship and trustee issue, isn't it true that Roger was dissatisfied with the way court was going?
Your Honor, I'm going to object. That's a leading question. It suggests the answer. How did Roger feel about how court was going? Sorry.
So, Mr. Stege, yes, if you could ask the open
Okay.
questions.
What did Roger say about whether he was satisfied with how the case was going?
I'm not sure exactly how I can answer that in like a yes or no question.
No. Can you answer it in a way that's not yes or no?
I don't believe so. There's so many things that we've talked about over the years, and I don't know how much time I have. I'm not trying to tell stories up here, but answer your questions as best I can.
Okay. Was Roger satisfied with the outcome of the cases?
I don't believe so.
And what would he say about that?
That he would.
Your Honor, I'm going to object as to a time frame that these conversations allegedly took place. Obviously, they've been friends for decades, so it sounds like. When did this happen?
Mr. Stege, I think if we could narrow down a time frame, I think that's a reasonable request.
Okay. Would Roger talk about the pendency of the cases during the entire time that the cases were going on, to your knowledge?
I'm sorry, did you say pendency?
Pendency, yes.
Pendency. I'm not familiar with that word. My apologies.
Okay. Pendency means during the time the case was happening or was going through the courts. Did Roger talk about the case during the entire time the case was in court?
I wouldn't say he talked the entire time, no, but on a few occasions we had spoken, and he has told me a little bit about his views of the case from his perspective.
Okay, and the last time he talked to you about his views on the case or his perspective, when was that in relation to August 8th of 2019?
I'm not sure I could give you quite a straight answer on that. I don't remember the last exact time we talked about it.
What about the last inexact time, the time frame, in terms of, was it a day, was it a month, was it a year?
That we talked about his case before August 8th, you're saying?
Yes.
Well, I'm sure probably, I want to say years.
Okay, so it's your knowledge he never, so he never talked to the case about the guardianship or trustee issues up until August 8th, 2019.
Oh, no, he had spoken before that, yes.
Okay, but you said it in years.
That we've been having discussions about that case, yeah.
I don't know.
And then the last time, I would say, would probably be right there around August 8th, I would say.
Right, because on August 8th, what did Roger say about the case?
I'm just sorry, I don't know how to answer that question.
What did Roger say about the case on August 8th, 2019?
Many things from his perspective, how he felt the case was going and those sorts of things.
right? So how did he feel the case was, what did he say about how he felt the case was going on August 8th, 2019?
Well, I don't believe he felt the case was very good.
Okay, well, was that his words? The case isn't going good?
No, those are my words.
What were his words?
I couldn't repeat his exact words to you.
Okay, do you recall, did you in fact on August 8th, 2019 meet with Roger Hillygus?
Yes, I did.
Where did you meet?
Initially, we met at McDonald's in Sun Valley.
At what time of day did you meet at McDonald's?
It was around, I believe, 9 a.m.
And how did you know to meet at McDonald's?
I'd spoken to Roger.
Did you speak to him earlier that day, or did you speak to him the days prior?
You know, to be honest, I don't remember if it was that morning that we talked or the day before. I don't remember.
And what was the purpose of the stated purpose leading up to the meeting? Why did you meet Roger at McDonald's?
He just mentioned that he wanted to meet up and talk with me.
Okay,
It wasn't specific over the phone.
okay. And so you went to McDonald's and met with Roger, correct? What car was Roger in?
I believe it was a Saturn or a
Okay.
Honda, a small car. I believe, actually, thinking back, I believe it was a Honda.
A Honda car?
Yes, sir.
Are you able to say whether it was an Accord or Civic or some other model of car?
Well, they're very similar. I believe it was white in color, yeah, and the exterior, and I believe it was a four-door.
Okay.
So I would say something like that, a Civic or a Ford or something of that kind of model.
And that's a car you had seen Roger driving before, or knew him to drive or own before?
Yes.
Did you know what any other cars that Roger owned or drove either?
He's driven many cars. Gosh, I couldn't give you a whole list of all the ones that I know he's driven.
Well, what I'm asking is, around this time, how many cars, well, isn't it true that Roger also had either he or someone in his household a RAV4, a Toyota?
Your Honor, the question, isn't it true that such and such was owned, is a leading question. And the witness has already indicated he doesn't have a good memory of what he owned.
It is a leading question, Mr. Stege, you can rephrase that.
Well, I would say it also, it misstates the prior testimony. And shortly, Your Honor, I will direct your attention to 50.155. But I will ask a more open question. Have you ever seen Roger drive any other cars, say in the month before this?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Had you, Roger's wife, had you met her?
I'm sorry.
Up until this point, had you met Roger's wife?
No, I had not met her.
Okay. So in the decades you knew him, you had never met his wife?
That is correct.
Although, yet you had been to his house in Sun Valley, or Lone Valley, sorry.
The times that I was there, she wasn't there.
Okay. Did you ever, the times that you were there and she was not, did you ever see any other cars at the residence?
I'm sure there's been cars there, but I couldn't be descriptive on what they were or what they even looked like.
Okay. Okay. And then you got to McDonald's. Who was there, or who was involved in the meeting?
That was just Roger and I.
Okay. And what?
That's to my knowledge.
Okay. What was discussed?
A little bit about his plans for the day.
Did he state whether his plans for the day had anything to do with his mother?
He did.
What did he say his plan was?
Well, that was towards the end of the conversation, I would say, but he mentioned how he wanted to help his mother.
Okay. And so his statement was, plan of the day was to help his mom?
That's correct.
Was he any more specific than that?
I'm sorry, did you say plan of the day?
Yeah.
Oh, I wouldn't say that it was the plan of the day. It was just one of the items that we talked about for that day.
Okay. Did Roger say how he wanted to help his mother?
He wanted to take care of her himself.
Okay. Did he say he wanted to take her from the facility on that day?
He made indication that he would like to see that happen.
Okay.
But he wasn't saying that he was gonna do anything or not. There were still things that he needed to do to find out how that was gonna go, I believe.
Okay. Can you be a little more specific about the words used instead of saying he indicated that? Can you tell us what it was he said about he wanted to help his mom?
Well, one of the things, for instance, is he wanted to go and speak to the police department and talk to them about what he was planning on doing and to get some assistance with the police department. So that was one of the items that he was talking about.
Up until that point, had Roger ever indicated this a supposed new jury verdict or?
Your Honor, I have to object to the leading questions.
Mr. Stege?
Leading questions are allowed of witnesses depending on their reaction to the line of questioning. And so I would invoke 50.155, which allows for such questions.
Your Honor, I believe NRS 50.155 covers the
I'm sorry.
exclusion and sequestration, I can't say that one.
Thank you.
Sequestering of witnesses.
You are correct. It's 51.15.
What number are we at?
115.
Okay. Your Honor, is he asking this court to declare this witness an adverse witness then?
Section 3, sub B, a witness identified with an adverse party.
Why, he's not identified with an adverse party, Your Honor.
I don't know that that foundation has quite been laid, Mr. Stege, at this point.
Okay. Sir, what plan came out of this meeting between you and Roger?
What plan came out of it?
What plan came out of it?
I really don't understand what you mean by plan. We didn't really have a plan.
Okay.
He mentioned things that he wanted to do, and then we went and did them.
Okay, what things did he want to do?
Like I said, we went to the police station for one. For two, we went to the copy store to make copies of paperwork.
Okay.
And then that's pretty much the gist of it.
What other things were said that wanted to be done?
I wouldn't be able to tell you. There was, I don't remember. Those were the main things that I can remember.
So main things, go to the police station, correct?
Well, first we needed to make some copies.
Okay. So the order being, make copies, go to police station.
Yes, sir.
What was the next step in the plan?
Your Honor, he has asked him 4 separate times, under 4 separate circumstances, what the next step of the plan is. And each time, this witness indicates he doesn't know, he doesn't remember. I'm objecting to ask and answer.
I believe that Mr. Stege is approaching this from a number of different ways. I think he's entitled to do that, given some hesitancy this witness has in recalling things. I'll allow it.
What was the next step in the plan?
I was just along kind of for the ride, so I wasn't sure what the next step was, other than the only thing left to do was to go talk to the care facility after we'd spoken to the police.
Okay. Was there a plan to remove Mrs. Hillygus from, in this McDonald's meeting, to remove Mrs. Hillygus from the facility?
Your Honor, I'm gonna object, that's a leading question.
It's open-ended, Your Honor. Same statute, same issue,
Which statute are we talking about again?
same one, 115.
50.115. 50.1, NRS 50.115. If I can have a moment, Your Honor, sorry. Leading questions may not be used on direct examination of a witness without the permission of the court. Leading questions are permitted on cross-examination. He has to demonstrate that this attorney is being non-cooperative and that this witness is being non-cooperative, and he has not done that. I object to leading questions.
I don't think that the question, just because it has a yes or a no answer, is necessarily always leading. I disagree, so I will allow it.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question then?
Was the plan to remove Mrs. Hillygus from the memory care facility at the McDonald's meeting?
You keep mentioning the word plan, as if I knew what was going to happen. I wasn't sure what was gonna happen. I was basically along for the ride accompanying my friend.
So what was he saying about that question, whether he was going to remove Mrs. Hillygus from memory care facility?
Well, he didn't say whether he was going to or not.
Okay, you said there were things planned. You said the plan was go make copies and then go to the police station, correct?
Yeah, looking at it hindsight, that's what it was. But in the moment, we just kind of I just went for a ride with him. And we were talking about normal everyday things.
Okay.
And I was just accompanying him for the ride.
Was it stated as to why you were chosen to accompany him for the ride?
No, I would assume because I'm his friend.
Okay. Where do you go? Where the two you go along for the ride?
We went to get some copies
Where?
at the copy place, Office Max, I believe is the name of it.
Which one?
And it's across from the Northtown Winco,
Okay.
across from the Karen Street over there. I don't know the exact address or anything.
Did you? Who went in the store?
Roger and I.
Did you? Who made the copies?
I don't understand who made the copies. I think we were both there at the copy machine making copies.
Okay. So the answer, both of you made copies. Is that correct?
I guess it was.
Okay. And what was it? What were you making? The two of you making copies of?
It was a stack of paperwork that Roger had.
Okay.
I couldn't tell you exactly what all was in there.
How big was the stack?
I would say like bigger than the one that I have here.
Okay. What paperwork do you have there?
This is the, I don't know what it's called, what this document is exactly called. But anyway, I would say that.
So let me just stop you. I was not aware you had any paperwork there. You're actually not allowed to have any documents while you're testifying. So whatever that is, I was just made aware of it. Now, if you could turn it face down and place it over on the bench where y'all can see it, please. Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Stege.
That document that you brought with you, where'd you get that?
This I got from Roger
Okay. When did you get that paper from Roger?
this morning.
Okay. Was there another meeting that you attended with Roger?
I'm sorry?
Was there a meeting this morning with Roger? With you and Roger?
Yes, I met with him briefly
Okay. Where?
in the street, down the street from the courthouse.
Okay. Who else was there?
Stewart, and then there was a couple other individuals, I can't remember their names, it was a male and a female.
And You don't remember their names, but who are they? Like, what's their affiliation to Roger?
As far as I know, friends, but I don't know 100%.
Had you met those people before today?
I can't say that I have.
Okay. How long was the meeting today?
Just as long as it took to walk down the street.
Okay. And does that time include Roger handing you that paperwork?
It does.
Since this meeting at McDonald's, how many times you met with Roger Hillygus?
I have no idea.
Is it 0? Well, besides the meeting today, was there one before that?
Have I met with Roger since the,
Before today and after the McDonald's meeting, when did you last meet? How many times have you met with Roger?
more than 0, but I couldn't tell you how many times. I never counted or took track of that.
Okay. So your testimony is you have no memory of how many times you've met with him?
That's correct.
Isn't it, well, is it so many that you just lose track of it?
I wouldn't say that, no.
Is it frequent, your meetings? Are they frequent, your meetings?
No, I wouldn't say so. I'd say very infrequent.
What about Mr. Handte? You've met with Handte since, well, after the August 8th of 2019 and before he was on the street today for the meeting. Have you met with Stu Handte?
I don't believe so. Not in person, I don't believe I did.
Okay, besides in person, have you met with him?
You mean, was I present on a phone call where he was present?
Yes.
Yes.
Who else was on that phone call?
I couldn't tell you who all was on the phone call. I don't remember all the names.
Okay, do you remember any of the names?
I believe the attorneys of counsel for Stewart and Roger.
Okay. Present, the current lawyers or former lawyers?
I believe it was the former attorneys.
Former attorneys on criminal matters or civil matters?
I don't understand the difference.
Okay. So was one of the people on the phone, Mr. Houston?
I don't believe so.
Okay, who else was on the call? Even if you don't know him by name, but like association?
All I know is that I know Roger's name and I know Stewart's name.
Okay. What about affiliation-wise? You knew from the phone meeting with Stu Handte that lawyers were there, right? Because someone had said, oh, the lawyers are here, or something to that effect.
On the phone, you're saying?
Yes.
Yes.
How did you know that they were lawyers?
Oh, they had identified themselves, I believe.
Okay.
I said their name, but I don't remember.
Okay. Okay. Did you see Stu Handte on August 8th of 2019?
Yes, I did.
When in relation to the McDonald's meeting did you see Stu Handte?
Many hours after that.
Okay. What's happening in the intervening hours?
I'm sorry?
What is happening in the hours between the McDonald's meeting and meeting with Stu Handte?
What has happened?
Yeah. What are you doing?
Well, I was accompanying Roger.
Okay.
And then I had something to do with my kids at the school. We had to sign them up for something.
Okay.
That's something that I remember doing that day. And then we went to, like I said, make the copies and the police department. And I believe that was it up until we went to Stone Valley.
Okay. So you went from, included in the several hours is going to the copy place, going to a police station, and then going to Stone Valley. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, one more time?
You stated that it was several hours later that you
Yes.
saw Handte. I'm asking if included in, or the substance of what happened in those hours is when, as it relates to Mr. Hillygus, copy place, police station, then Stone Valley.
No, I didn't accompany him the whole day. Like I said, I broke off at some point and met with my wife and did some like registration stuff at the school, I believe it was.
Okay. And you had stated you were along for the ride with Roger, right? And so at some point he gave you a ride to where your wife was?
Yes.
Okay. In this white car?
Yes.
And is that after the copy place?
Yes.
Okay. When's the police station in this? When does that happen?
We went to the police station after we had made their copies.
Okay. But before you met with your wife?
Correct.
Okay. What police station did you go to?
The Reno Police Department on, I believe it's 2nd Street.
Okay.
It's a big building next to the river.
And yes, thank you. From what became of the copies that you had made?
What became of the copies?
Yeah. When you go to the police station, where are the copies that were made?
I'm not sure. Perhaps they're in their car, perhaps Roger had them. I didn't take note of what he did with them once we made copies.
So once the copies were, going back to the copy place, once the copies were made, did you ever hold them or have an occasion to read them or see what they were?
I believe I helped put some of the stuff into the car, but no, I wasn't looking through it or anything like that. I just helped him put it in the car, and then that was the last that I had touched it.
Okay. So do you know what the paperwork was?
No, I couldn't give you a specific answer. It was many things that looked court-related.
Okay. And Roger, up until the point you're at the police station, what does Roger say about what the papers are, if anything?
He says that they were documents and things pertaining to his case.
Did he say the documents were the things that were going to help?
Your Honor, I'm going to object. That's a leading question.
The question's not out yet, and so the question of whether it suggests the answer is not yet right.
Let's let Mr. Stege finish the question.
Okay.
Did Roger say what effect the paperwork was going to have on getting his mother from Stone Valley?
He didn't mention what it was going to do. He didn't say anything like that, but it seemed as though he felt that the paperwork that he did have was sufficient for him to get his mother from the facility.
Why did it seem sufficient?
Well, that was what he was implying.
Was he implying that, or was he saying that? And, well, yeah, was he saying it or implying
I believe he was implying it.
it? And how was he
That's kind of
implying it?
because that's my interpretation of what he was saying.
How was he implying it?
Verbally,
What was he saying to imply it?
he was saying things like, he felt like that the paperwork they had was sufficient to get his mom out. That's what the gist of what he was talking about. But specifically, I couldn't tell you exactly everything he said. I can't remember.
What happened at the police station?
Could you be a little bit more specific? I don't know quite how to answer what happened. At the
Very
police
good.
station. There's many things that happened at the police station.
What was the first thing that happened when you and Roger drove up to the police station?
We walked through the front doors and spoke to one of the attendants at the office.
Did you ever speak with a police officer on that day?
I wouldn't, I don't know how to answer that because I didn't really have a conversation with the officer, but I do believe I introduced myself.
Okay. You were present when a police officer came out and met with you and Roger, isn't that true?
No, I wasn't present. When the officer came out, he was talking to us in the lobby briefly, and then he asked if we wanted to go outside for more privacy, and Roger and him exited the building, and I wasn't able to go right then. I turned and I went and got a drink of water. I was feeling very thirsty, so I saw the water fountain and I got a drink, and then I followed them out.
And
But
then,
they were already outside.
okay, and then you were present for a conversation between Roger and a police officer, correct?
Yes, just not the beginning of it.
Right. Well, but it is true that you were there when the officer came out to meet with you and Roger, correct?
Inside the lobby, yes.
Yes. So, okay. So yes, you were present for the meeting.
But the meeting, like I said, went outside.
Okay.
So there was perhaps some things that were said that I wasn't there for.
Okay. And during that interaction between Mr. Hillygus and the officer, isn't it true the officer was dressed in a police uniform?
Yes, he was.
And could you tell whether he was wearing a body-worn camera?
Yes, I could.
And prior to testifying this afternoon, did you have occasion to review the contents of a white in color thumb drive?
I did.
And did you, after reviewing the contents of it, did you recognize it to be a copy of the body-worn camera depicting the interaction that you have just described?
I do.
And upon doing so, did you affix your initials and the date to that
I did.
thumb drive? I approach the court clerk, please, with proposed next in order. I also ask that the document that the witness brought with him be marked.
There's no basis to have the document the witness brought with him marked, Judge. There's no legal need or basis for that. It's in the document. He didn't know he couldn't bring it up if he left it in the seat. The DA's office couldn't ask for it. He just brought it up because he didn't know any better. There's no evidence he was even looking at it or reading about it.
Mr. Stege, your response?
The relevance is that it came from the defendant, one of the defendants prior to court today, and at least I'll be able to look at it and it has to be made part of the record.
I object to it being made part of the record, and it's his document. He can decide whether or not he wants the DA to look at it or not. He can't be intimidating this man on the witness stand like this at this time for making an innocent mistake.
So I don't think the conduct is intimidating. I think that Mr. Stege has a right to ask questions and make statements about it. I was not aware that he had the document. I did not see him looking at a document or referencing a document, only when he said it and it was brought up did I see him then have it. So I don't believe it was something he was referencing during his testimony. I've been watching both the witness and counsel very carefully. So I don't believe at this point that it needs to be marked. I did not see the witness referencing it at all during his testimony.
Sir, may I see the document that you brought with you to court? That came from Roger Hillygus.
Your Honor, I believe he's either entitled to his own counsel or the court needs to tell him it's his choice. He doesn't have to do it.
Or the man brought a piece of evidence with him that came from the defendant, brought it with him on the stand. It is ascribed innocence but that is a question of weight of the motive yet to be determined. The man has a piece of paper. The court made observations. We don't know what's in that record, in that document compared to the man's testimony. It is certainly the subject of examination at the minimum.
That is a matter of law enforcement, not a matter of this court. And Mr. Stege, with all due respect, is not law enforcement. He needs an officer to do that. He needs somebody to do that. He wants to have this man interviewed. We're not conducting discovery or police interrogation or police interview in this courtroom today. We're on a short time frame. We're trying to get this difficult case done in one day. And this would just extend the proceedings. I don't see any legal basis for this man to have to hand over these documents to Mr. Stege. They're his documents. He brought them to his stand. As I said, if he would have left them out in the chair, Mr. Stege would have no obligation to him, and I'm not sure he has an obligation to him now if they weren't used.
It raises a question of bias, Your Honor, and although that is a long and passionate response, it is not on point in terms of both the request of the state.
Judge, the only question before this court right now, if I may, is whether or not this man needs to be advised that he does not need to hand over those documents to Mr. Stege just because he asked for it. He doesn't need to hand them over to Mr. Stege just because he asked for them. And Mr. Stege is asking him, as an officer of the state, with multiple law enforcement agents in the courtroom, whether or not he wants to give that to him. Well, he doesn't have to. And I think as an officer of the court, he, being the witness, who's here under a subpoena from the state, needs to know that he doesn't have to do that. And if he doesn't want to, that's all. That's the only question before the court. These issues of bias and everything else, those can be explored either through an investigation or something like that, but not right here today.
Question of intimidation was brought up, and sort of this long narrative suggesting certain things not appropriate and not on point for the state's request. The exhibit ought to be shown to this state on this question of bias. The man brings nothing up, different issue. The man brings it up, describes having gotten it from the defendant, a thing that is harmful to Mr. Evenson's argument that puts it squarely before this court.
Well, I don't know what the document is, and I don't know whether it's harmful or not. I'm saying that this man, as a witness, as a person in the United States of America, has a right to know that he does not need to cooperate with Mr. Stege. That's fact. That's the law, and Mr. Stege cannot contest that. And to say that this is an exhibit indicates his bias because you already indicated it wasn't. And it's his papers, it's his document. For all I know, who knows what it is, but it's not to be done in this courtroom under these circumstances. It's extremely unfair to the witness.
So, I've heard enough on this issue. I've already ruled that it's not something to be marked, it is an exhibit to be made a record in this case. It occasionally happens that sometimes innocently a witness will bring a document up which no one realizes they have, and as soon as they do, it's set aside, like what we did today. We've had police officers come in who accidentally are holding a copy of their report. No one realizes it until they're sitting in the witness stand, and then once we do realize it, we have them put it away. That happens. So, in this situation, I'm not going to make any court orders about this document here, given that we know nothing about it. Again, I already put on the record that I did not see the witness looking at it, reading it, referencing it in any way. And I believe only when there was a question about documents, I believe it was about perhaps how a stack of papers, then it was held up by the witness and we realized it was there. At that point, it was put aside. So I'm not going to make any orders about what has to be done with it. It's the property of the witness. I have no idea what it is or it isn't. Mr. Stege, you can certainly ask him questions. I allowed you to ask him questions about it.
Right.
To show bias if you would like, but I'm not going to make a court order that he's got to turn it over or any other thing like that at this point. Again, I did not see him referencing it whatsoever. And as y'all are aware, witnesses are allowed to talk to either parties, investigators. They don't have to, but they are allowed to.
Sir, please review proposed yield.
say you?
You, yes, sir. Sir, do you recognize that proposed exhibit?
Yes.
How do you recognize it?
It appears to be the one that I reviewed before I came up here today.
Does it have anyone's initials on it?
Those are my initials.
That's the thumb drive that you signed indicating that it was a true and accurate depiction of the encounter.
To the best of my knowledge.
I'm moving you.
Your Honor, I previously told Mr. Stege as we were coming into the courtroom today that I was no longer objecting to this particular piece of evidence coming in, and so I have no objection at this time. I'm trying to be a man of my word.
All right, Mr. Pitaro,
No, Your Honor, I have no objection.
it shall be admitted.
Okay, from the police station, well, to your memory, was any paperwork brought out at the interaction at the police station by either you or Roger Hillygus?
No, I can say I did not brandish any paperwork or anything like that, no.
What about Roger?
And Roger, I don't recall whether he did or didn't.
Okay,
I don't recall if he showed the officer paperwork or not.
well, separate question whether he showed it. The question is, did he have it on him to your knowledge?
No, I don't believe he did.
Right, because you were with him getting out from the copy place to the police station, right? The entire time.
Yes,
Just the two of you in Roger's car, correct?
correct.
Where do you go after the police station?
After the police station, that's when I met with my wife and went to the school.
And how did you meet back up with Roger?
Yeah, he picked me up at the same McDonald's as he did earlier that morning.
How much time had elapsed from when he dropped you off to do that thing with your wife?
I couldn't tell you exactly, but it felt like definitely over an hour.
Okay. Who was in the car when he picks you up?
I don't recall anybody being in the car other than Roger.
What car did he pick you up in?
The same car I mentioned earlier.
What did he say when he picked you up?
He said hello.
How did you know to meet at the McDonald's again?
I don't remember exactly
Uh,
whether we spoke in person over that or over the phone. I don't remember.
But you had a cell phone on you that day, right?
Yes, I did.
Did Roger?
I guess I did.
So you don't know how it was you came to agree to meet at McDonald's?
Right, it was either over the phone or in person. I can't recall it.
Where do you go next?
For McDonald's?
Yes.
We went to the Stone Valley facility.
What did Roger say he had been doing in the time that the two of you were separate?
He didn't mention what he was doing.
What did Roger say was going to happen when the two of you got to Stone Valley?
What did he say was going to happen when we got there?
Yes.
He didn't really say other than he was going to give them his documentation.
Okay, so he said he was going to give them the documentation.
Yeah.
And was this the same documentation that the various copies were made of?
I would assume so, but I couldn't tell you exactly.
How many copies, when you're at the copy place, how many copies of the paperwork were made?
I don't recall how many copies.
Was it more than one copy?
I couldn't tell you. I don't remember if it was more than one copy or just one copy.
Are there any phone conversations in the car from McDonald's to Stone Valley? Asked a different way, do you make any phone calls or text messages during that drive?
I don't remember, to be honest. It's possible. I have my phone with me, but I don't remember what kind of communication I was having with anybody at that point. It's been a long time.
What about any communication that Roger is having?
I don't recall him being on his phone. And if he was, I don't know who he was talking to.
So you don't know?
No.
How long did it take to get there?
Under half an hour, I would say.
And where did you park when you got there? Or where did Roger park the car when you got there?
Well, we parked across the street in the shady parking lot.
Who was there when you pulled up?
There was nobody there.
Was anyone parked across the street in the parking lot for Stone Valley?
Yes, there was a parking lot there with cars in it.
Was that parking lot full?
I don't understand full. I mean, was there no spots left? Is that what you're asking?
Were there spots left at the Stone Valley?
I'm not sure how many spots there was, but there was some spots, I believe.
Oh, roughly how many cars were parked there?
I don't remember.
How many spots are there?
I don't remember. I'm sorry, but I didn't count the parking spots in a parking lot.
What happens next?
I'm sorry, next?
What happens next when you pull up to, or the car pulls up to Stone Valley? What happens next?
Well, like I said, we didn't pull up to Stone Valley. We pulled up across the street in a shaded parking lot.
Okay, what happened at that parking lot?
We sat in the shade
How long did you sit in the shade for?
for several minutes. I couldn't tell you exactly how long.
Okay. What are you talking about?
What do you mean what we're talking about?
What are you talking about as you sit in the shade for an unknown quantity of minutes across the street from Stone Valley?
Wasn't too much discussion. I think mostly Roger was focused on his paperwork and things like that, making sure he had everything in order.
What was he doing to make sure he had it all in order?
He was looking through it, using his hands and sifting through paperwork.
How many? Okay. How big was the stack of paper?
It seemed quite large, like I said, a little larger than that thing, but.
How much larger than the paperwork that you brought from Roger Hillygus with you to court today? Was it twice that big?
I would say that's a fair statement.
Okay. He was going through it. Was he saying anything about it as he's going through it?
Not that I can recall. He
Um,
might have mentioned a couple things out loud or something, but I wasn't really paying attention.
Okay, so you don't remember it? You weren't paying attention to what he was doing?
No, I was not.
What were you paying attention to?
Well, I was paying attention to my phone and then just enjoying the beautiful day in the shade
Okay, why were you paying attention to your phone?
because there's nothing else to do there.
Okay. What happens next?
What do you mean, what happens next after?
What's the next thing that happens after Roger is making sure all his paperwork's in order?
I believe somewhere around that time is when Stewart showed up
How did Stewart show up?
in a vehicle.
What kind of vehicle?
Some kind of a blue SUV, I believe.
Where did he park?
I believe he parked right next to us.
What happened when he parked? What
He
do you,
exited the vehicle and came and sat down next to us.
sat down in the white car?
No, outside, under the tree in the shade.
Okay, so you are now sitting in the shade, the three of you?
Correct.
And what is, how do you know Stu Handte?
I'm sorry, I don't understand how I know him. Like, how did I meet him?
Well, I'll say it a different way. Was this the first time you had met Stu Handte?
In person, correct.
Okay. Meeting him not in person, when was the first time you met him?
Well, I couldn't tell you. It was, I believe, over a phone call.
Okay. So prior to seeing him in person, you had a phone call with Stu Handte?
I believe so.
Okay, well, you just said you had met him on the phone, so the answer is yes, you had met him you had had a phone
I
call.
said that I wasn't sure, that I thought I might have.
Okay,
Met him before, over the phone, before I met him in person.
in what context would you meet him over the phone?
I believe he was talking with Roger, and I think Roger said, hey, you want to talk to my friend? And I think there's something to that effect, and I just said hi. So
Okay.
then he was talking about his training in law enforcement and things like that.
Okay,
Career, not training.
okay. Was he talking about his career and training in relation to removing Susan Hillygus from the memory care facility?
No.
What is discussed in the shade under the tree as the three of you sit there?
I didn't really do any talking myself. I just kind of sat there and listened, and Roger and Stu were talking about, I guess, various documents within the paperwork. I think, I couldn't tell you which ones, but some papers out of the stack.
Okay, discussing how? What were they saying about them?
I think it was Roger saying stuff like, okay, this is the one here that he thought was very important for that day, and I do believe Stu glanced over it real quick.
Well, and what did Stu say when he glanced over it real quick?
He said, I believe, that it was, that it looked good, that it looked official.
Okay. Did Stu mention having telephoned anyone at RPD?
I'm sorry?
Did Stu mention having ever telephoned someone at RPD in relation to Susan Hillygus?
Not that I'm aware of.
Did Roger indicate that he had spoken with someone at RPD on the phone in relation to Susan Hillygus?
Yes.
What did he say?
He had a phone call with somebody at the police department. I don't remember the gentleman's name.
Well, what did he say about what did Roger say about the content of that conversation?
I believe it was similar to what he said to the detective, I believe it was Handte, that I saw on this memory stick. It was things like that,
Things like what?
like the things that he discussed in the video I saw.
Well, okay, what things did he say he discussed with the person on the RPD person on the phone?
That he felt that he had the proper documentation, and that he wanted to help his mom, and he gave them, I guess, as much information as he could that they were wondering about. But I could only hear Roger's side of the conversation. I couldn't hear the individual on the phone.
Oh, so you were present when Roger had telephoned the person at RPD and told them about his situation?
Yes, there was.
Okay, where did that occur?
In the car, from the office max, I believe it's called, to the police station.
Okay, and so,
Your Honor, is there somewhere we're going with this testimony? This seems very cumulative and not particularly probative on where we're going today. I mean, it's been very duplicative and confirmed a lot of other testimony we've heard, but I'd like an offer of proof as to where we're going today, because it doesn't seem like this witness has much to offer other than what we've already heard from other witnesses.
not a proper objection to say, I don't understand why this witness is being called. I'm not obliged to describe why a witness is being called. It is relevant, as a man we're getting to the point where he is involved in the incident with Mrs. Hillygus. So I think the relevance is obvious.
I was stating an answer objection and cumulative testimony, to be clear for the record, and I think that we were trying to get this hearing done today, so that's why I raised the issue.
Well, it sounds like that's an offer to stipulate that the conversation from Hillygus was the same, that described by the first witness, Deputy Chief Miller. There's a stipulation that his client made those statements.
So, counsel, I think we're getting far afield here. Mr. Stege has a right, I believe, to ask these questions. These are, I think it's obvious to everyone, allegedly on the date of the incident in question, across the street from the facility in question. And I think that he has a right to ask the witness these questions, and if it is taking time, then he has a right, as any other attorney does, to take the time necessary to do so.
Okay.
Do you know if the person, well, how many phone calls did it take for Roger to get to speak to someone while on the drive from to the police station?
How many phone calls did it take?
Right.
I believe he just made one phone call.
So as you recall, he called and the person, he was able to connect with them. He didn't have to be called back or anything like that, or leave a message or anything like that.
You know, I don't remember if he received the call or he had made the call. I just remember he was on the phone with somebody from the police department. That's basically all that I know.
Okay, and you know that he discussed his beliefs towards, about his mother, Mrs. Hillygus, to the officer.
He, like I said, it seemed like he was asking things and saying things just right in line with what he said with the other officer. I don't recall him saying anything too different.
Okay. Let's go back to outside of Stone Valley, that parking lot across the street. What happens after Stu Handte looks at the documents?
I believe that shortly after that, Stewart and Roger went into the facility.
Okay. What did you do while they did that?
Oh, I continued to sit on the grass.
I thought you said you were on the curb under the shade.
No, I said I was under a tree in the shade.
Okay. Near the white car.
Correct.
And near the car of Stu Handte, correct?
Correct.
What was the last thing either man said before they walked across the street?
You know, to be honest, I don't remember what the last thing they said was.
What did, besides looking at the documents, documents, what else did Stu Handte do? under the shade.
I don't think he did anything else.
Do you recall any other words that he said?
Not specifically, no.
Well, what about non-specifically? What about in a general sense?
Specifically, it seemed like, seemed as though he was, concerned to make sure that Roger had the correct paperwork. And so he wanted to take a look at that. And it seems like as soon as he looked over it, he seemed to agree with it.
What, have you since been made aware of what the documents were that?
Your Honor, I'm going to object. Have you since been made aware of what the documents were is a hearsay, will elicit a hearsay response?
Mr. Stege?
Not hearsay if it's a statement of Mr. Evenson's client.
Well,
If the source is Evenson's client, then not hearsay.
that was not a part of the question, so I guess I'll wait until the answer comes out.
I'm sorry, could you ask me the question again?
Have you since been made aware of what the documents were that Handte was looking at and that Roger had?
And what do you mean by aware?
Have you since seen what those documents were?
No, I don't believe so.
Have you since seen copies of those documents?
I think it's possible, but I don't know for sure.
How is it possible?
Because I don't know what was in that stack, and so perhaps I've seen it, perhaps I haven't, I don't know.
So you have seen documents related to the trustee / guardianship case involving Susan Hillygus?
Yes.
Okay. How many documents do you think you have seen?
I don't know how many documents.
How many pages have you seen?
I would say several pages, things like that.
Okay. Several, as in several more than the documents you brought to court today?
I don't think I would say that. That seems to be quite, I haven't looked at the paperwork very much.
Okay, even though but you did say you have seen several documents. The question is,
Well, when we were at the copy store,
okay,
I mean, I saw them, but I wasn't reading them. I don't know what they were actually pertaining to this whole thing or not. I don't know.
Okay. You don't know if they were, even the ones that you saw being made, you don't know if those are related to this?
I wasn't reading them. To the best of my knowledge, I would assume they were, but I don't know factually.
Your Honor, may I ask leading questions of the witness?
I think, well, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Your Honor, that's fine.
I believe at this point, the requirements of NRS 5115, have been satisfied. We have now had much more testimony about the relations and the nature between this witness and an adverse party. So I will allow leading questions to be asked at this point.
Sir, isn't it true you have seen multiple of the pleadings involved in this case?